Rare photos from the 1980s captured way more than expected. Freddie Mercury celebrating his 40th birthday. Acclaimed vocalist and flamboyant personality, Freddie Mercury embodied the outlandish style of the 80s. His iconic performance in 1985 during Live Aid goes down as one of the most memorable sets in music history. His creation of Queen led to songs that everyone from your grandmother to your niece knows. Bohemian Rhapsody, Somebody to Love, We Are the Champions, Don't Stop Me Now, and Crazy Little Thing Called Love all remain recognizable even to people who don't know Queen was a band. 80s technological advances offered a lightweight, portable camera weighing more than a small dog with luggage included. Kids today walk around with nearly every conceivable tech need just a click away. Back in the 80s, a portable camera meant you needed one friend to help carry it. This CTVR amounted to the pinnacle of handheld camera technology while shooting completely grainy quality. Nevertheless, the footage would still wow family members like it was the work of George Lucas. The 80s, an era of excess, especially when it came to shag carpet. The cars loomed large, and the hair even larger, but nothing said the 80s like a shag rug that covered every square inch of the home. From bathrooms to cars, nothing was safe from the shag. Back then, some rugs were so thick you could lose a small child. Not that you'd mind. They always showed up for dinner, didn't they? Sure, shag was harder to clean than an angry cat, but boy, did it feel good between your toes. Oh, how the times have changed. High-tech gaming back in the day. Today's kids' gaming systems are more powerful than the computers NASA used to reach the moon. They also come with hardware so complicated it takes an engineering degree just to plow through the instruction manual. In the 80s, things were simple. This converter was simply called the switch. Even your blind golden retriever could figure out how this worked. Ah, simpler times. When a trip to McDonald's felt like Disneyland. Today, people would rather spend half an hour in the drive-thru line than get out of their cars. In the 80s, McDonald's came with jungle gym sets that would make a kid's mouth water, hamburger-inspired castles, fry monkey bars, and the unforgettable ball pit. McDonald's really knew how to cater to children's desire to hide from their parents. Leveraging one's ability to stay out of parental fingertips could lead to ice cream if you played your cards right. An all-time 80s crossover. Murder, She Wrote meets Magnum P.I. 1986. In 1986, CBS crossed the beams with two of their most popular shows, Murder, She Wrote and Magnum P.I. In a special episode that aired November 23, 1986, Jessica comes to the aid of Magnum when he's framed for a double murder. Titled Novel Connection, viewers were titillated by the network flirtations with the third rail. Of course, at the end of the day, Jessica solves the crime, absolves Magnum, and gets her tan in the process. Who else could time their vacation so perfectly? An era for action figures. If you saw a child playing with action figures today, you might consider calling child services. But back in the 80s, action figures ranked atop the pantheon of toys. Michael Jackson, E.T., Mr. T, Drogo, Rocky, Indiana Jones, Jason and Freddy. You couldn't achieve social significance if you weren't an action figure. Becoming enshrined as a tiny plastic model was step one in stealing the hearts and minds of kids everywhere. Airplane, 80s humor at its best. The hit comedy debut of writer-director team of the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrahams. The film grossed an obscene $171 million against a budget of just $3.5 million. Robert Hayes, Julie Haggerty, and Leslie Nielsen headlined the parody of the disaster film genre. Nielsen in particular would go on to capitalize on the parody genre with a slew of hilarious Naked Gun movies. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar also makes a particularly memorable cameo when a trip to the grocery store also meant dragging your parents to the arcade games. Grocery stores today provide every possible convenience to expedite your shopping trip. They want to ensure you get in and out as efficiently as possible. The grocery stores of the 80s functioned slightly differently, offering as many distractions as humanly possible, especially when it came to kids. From small carnival rides to full-on arcade games, Trips to the grocery store became operations and talking your parents into staying as long as it took to earn a high score. When Mr. Universe gets overshadowed by Andre the Giant and Wilt Chamberlain, 1983. It's rare when the strongest man in the world looks like the most athletic kid in middle school. But that's precisely what happened when 14-time world champion Arnold Schwarzenegger worked with Andre the Giant and Wilt Chamberlain on Conan the Destroyer. Apparently, the trio would close down bars together and occasionally carry Arnold around like he was a child's doll. One of the worst days in the 80s, Family Portrait Day. Thanks to the advent of camera phones, taking the yearly holiday photo has become increasingly less painful. However, back in the 80s, pictures like these required a trip to the local photographer where inevitably at least one kid would throw a hellacious tantrum. Obviously, young Cindy in the bottom right felt she should have ridden shotgun over her brother. Back to the 80s. In 1985, Robert Zemeckis delivered one of the most successful original ideas Hollywood ever produced to this day. Without any previous text for inspiration or guidance, Zemeckis produced a film series that grossed nearly $1 billion, not adjusting for inflation. Unbelievably, the script was rejected over 40 times. Although, in fairness, the original script utilized an old refrigerator rather than a DeLorean. It turns out that was a good note. An all-time after-party with the crew from Cheers! 1989. Ain't no party like a Cheers after-party. You can bet with characters like Woody Harrelson, George Wendt, Ted Danson, Shelley Long, Kirstie Alley, and Kelsey Grammer that those after-partiers were the stuff of legend, especially when you consider that the show ranked in the top 10 in ratings for 8 of the 11 seasons. They charmed people with their suburb chemistry for nearly a decade. David Lee Roth in Serious Preparation, 1981. Obviously, few talents took their pre-show rehearsals as earnestly as David Lee Roth. During his various stints as lead singer for Van Halen, he was described as a non-stop booze and babes party train, and he also managed to make some music, helping the group chart their one and only #1 LP with the album. 1984. Tensions within the band saw multiple disbandments that culminated in a 2006 reunion tour that ranked among the highest gross that year. A simpler Halloween. Halloween costumes have become more and more elaborate thanks to the convenience of ordering online. Back in the day, you went to the store with your parents to choose from one of 5 masks that came with fire warnings. Then on the big night, you set out with your friends armed with pillowcases or the ubiquitous plastic orange pumpkin, looking to score more candy than every other kid. You also inevitably then did your best to hide the candy from your parents by consuming it all. When Pizza Hut meant a fancy night out, early 80s. Nothing said class like sharing a hand-tossed medium pan pizza in the 80s. The universal picnic clothes, red cups, and fake wood paneling set the mood like a bucket of oysters. Even kids knew they were in for a special evening of raiding the buffet until their innards burst from the Red Hut slices. Now the concept of dining in for pizza almost seems insane. Gary Coleman and David Hasselhoff, 2 titans of 80s culture, the highest paid child actor on television, and the hairiest heartthrob since Benji ruled the 80s in a way that's hard to describe today. The stars of Different Strokes and Knight Rider respectively dominated despite Coleman being a mere child and Hasselhoff starring alongside a talking car. Hasselhoff earned the distinction as the most watched man on TV according to Guinness World Records. Apparently, the crossover of The Young and the Restless and Baywatch really covers your bases. An all-time 80s day at the movies. Back in the 80s, there were fewer distractions to keep you from spending an entire day at the movie theater. However, even millennials might have put their phones down for an all-day 1987 extravaganza. During the glorious year, all the stars aligned to put The Lost Boys, RoboCop, Predator, and Full Metal Jacket on the big screen at the same time. Some believed it was a more historic event than a solar eclipse. When Fruit Punch came in a can, that required a can opener. Everything in the 80s was less user-friendly, but that only made your victories all the more rewarding. Opening a can of Hawaiian fruit punch in the day may have required a construction license and a few fingers. But once you got it opened, that punch hit the spot. Never mind that its nutritional facts equaled that of a Twinkie. Artificial flavors advertised as healthy was the way of the 80s. Keanu Reeves, 1984. Keanu Reeves' first acting credits came in 1984 on the TV show Hanjin, and video short for Coca-Cola. No telling why Reeves was wearing the most garish 80s jacket, shirt, and tie combinations ever seen. If you tried to buy this ensemble today, it would come with an epilepsy warning. Thankfully, Keanu got his big break on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and ditched the Technicolor suit. Mike Tyson and Rick James, 1988. Fame and fortune could come and go in the blink of an eye in the 80s. Heavyweight champ Mike Tyson and singer Rick James found that out the hard way. Nevertheless, these two enjoyed their relatively brief stint in the limelight extensively. From making grown men cower at the thought of fighting Tyson to James, who drove women crazy with hits like "Give It to Me, Baby" and "Super Freak," this pair made their indelible marks in history. When televisions came with furniture, today televisions weigh about as much as a folded deck chair and are about as wide. But back in the 80s, they not only weighed more than a Vespa, but often came complete with living room furniture. Sure, it took a small army troop to move it into your house, but the real problems came when you needed to whack the side to improve the picture. Thankfully, years of beating their TVs into submission built up lots of muscle. Not your son's Apollo Creed. Before Michael B. Jordan, Carl Weathers played the original Apollo Creed in the legendary Rocky series. The muscle-bound heavyweight champ of the world fell to the underdog Rocky in the first film before becoming his sage corner man in subsequent sequels. Few scenes from the 80s can match the homoerotic fireworks that come while Creed helps Rocky find the eye of the tiger. As Weather famously told Rocky, "Without some damn war to fight, then the warrior may as well be dead, stallion." The peak of 80s mobile gaming, the original Game Boy. In the 80s, the idea of a handheld gaming system was about as realistic as riding flying dragons to school. Yet, Nintendo brought addictive gaming joy to vacations and long car rides across the country when they debuted their first Game Boy in '89. Sure, it was just a pixelated square bouncing around, but in the 80s, that might as well have been virtual reality. Don't meet your heroes, 80s special effects. Special effects of the 80s often required some serious creativity. Few scenes better exemplify that ingenuity than the attack of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters. To portray a children's candy turned angry Michelin Man, special effects coordinators built a miniaturized version of New York and released their tiny terror upon their Tinker Town. The end result captivated audiences as a truly new type of movie terror stomped through NYC. The Transformer Watch. The 80s were a decade of mini fads, and novelty toys ranked right at the top. Back then, there were few better ways of announcing that you were still living in your mom's than a Transformer watch. From Timekeeper to Optimus Prime, in just a few seconds, these watches let the world know where your nerd allegiances lay. Still, it was probably better than a rock in a plastic cage. So that was all for today's video. Let us know what you think about it in the comments section, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our latest uploads. With that said, we will see you next time. Until then, take care.